Hi everyone, welcome back to another episode on my podcast. I'm Carolyn Chen and I'm a rising senior in high school. Today I had the wonderful opportunity to speak with Mr. Matthew Bell, a history teacher at Crystal Springs Uplands School. I hope you all enjoy our conversation. Hi, Mr. Bell. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today. I really appreciate it. And get into the topic of education, I wanted to ask you a little bit about yourself. So I was wondering what initially sparked your interest in history, and is that like something you knew you wanted to do when you were in high school?
Yeah, I should say thank you for inviting me on. This is really exciting. I've watched all of the podcasts you had, and
Oh,
uh,
really?
pretty good. Yeah,
Oh, thank you.
so I appreciate you asking me to be on. Yeah, so the story I usually tell in class is that when I was 15 in 10th grade modern world history, my favorite teacher, Mr. Wallach, we did a unit on revolutions, and one of them that he wrote up on the Cuban, Chinese, and one of them he put up there was Ireland, and I just became immersed in that, and that really drew me. And I think what was exciting about it was a sense of justice. So one of your guests actually was talking about twinning assessments with
Oh,
something
yeah.
that's wrong.
Uh-huh.
This was definitely the stuff that was going on in Northern Ireland at the time was in the news all the time. And so I felt like what I was learning was incredibly relevant, and it was tied to sort of this, although I had a bit of a romantic notion of it, a sense of justice for Ireland. But I think that, I would end up in justice work. And so I think that sort of connection was always really important. By the way, Mr. Wallach was my favorite teacher's name, and I just got to have lunch with him
Oh,
uh,
really?
about 2 months ago, and I hadn't seen him in like 35 years. And I got to talk to him for like an hour and a half, and I got to share this with him, that had changed my life and everything. And it's funny, he I now have more teaching experience than he did when he taught me, and so we were able to really swap notes and talk about best practices and stuff. But it's so a little bit more to your question. So that's what drew me into history. But when I was 17, Mr. Wallach asked me in another class about where we were, about where you are in planning for college. I remember he said, "So Bell, what's it going to be? What are we doing next?" And I said, "Well, I want to be a history teacher like you." And he said, "Oh no, you don't. No, you don't. Like you'll never be able to go to the level of depth with your students that you'll want to." Um, and by the way, I told him that at lunch, and he was like, "Oh my god, I said that. That's terrible." And so one of the things that's been great is that as I've been a classroom teacher, I've been able to teach in schools where I can go to that level of depth. So that's pretty exciting. But then when I was in boot camp too, I had an instructor who was dry and irreverent, and just hilarious, and was really empathetic to what we were going through. But I'll never forget that every time he would start talking about something, he would say, "Here's why this is important."
Mhm.
And so I learned a lot from one of these boot camp instructors who we worked with like the entire time. And that's when I really started thinking about, oh, teaching, there's a craft behind it that's like separate from the history. So yeah, so I was drawn to history early in high school at 17. I was like, I want to be a history teacher. But then, all these wonderful opportunities came my way. So I didn't start teaching until I was 40. I don't know why they would let anyone teach earlier than 30. Because
Really?
I just think you need a bit of life experience.
Mhm.
But I was able to take all these detours. I was in the service, and then I was in movement politics for about 15 years as a campaign organizer manager, and all of that stuff added to what I was able to do. Towards the end of my time, engaged in a lot of that justice work and coalition building, I ended up just doing a lot of trainings. So a lot of adult education about popular economics, how to be a shop steward in a union.
Like
And
adults. Like
what's that?
teaching other adults about these topics.
Yeah, yeah, it was entirely adults. And
Okay.
so I was, I realized like, okay, it's time. I think it's time to switch over and just be a teacher. So yeah, that's what I always knew I wanted to do it. I took a circuitous path to get here, but I'm really glad that I was able to wait and get some life experience in before I started. Yeah.
Yeah, wow, that sounds so cool. Thank you so much for sharing that. I think it's so fascinating how you like knew you wanted to do this in high school. Like as a 17-year-old, I have no idea what like I know
Yeah.
what I like, but I don't know like what path I want to take, which I think probably will take time to figure out and will change. But it's so cool how you like you knew you loved history since you were in high school. And I
Yeah.
was also wondering, kind of following up on what you said about, because you said you had a lot of experience before actually going into education. And I was wondering, are there any particular specific like memories or experiences that really shaped the way you approach like education or like your work?
Yeah, so I was able to work a lot in education when I was an organizer, campaign manager, um, especially in public education. And when I was in San Diego for a few years, and I um, was asked to come in and evaluate a situation that was going on in San Diego City schools. And I made a recommendation to, you should form a coalition. And so I was asked to try to create that coalition and lead it. And so we were able to pull together in San Diego City schools a coalition of a group that was organizing families and parents and um, especially in the barrio there in San Diego. And then there was a group that was organizing students against what was the California exit exam, high school exit exam, the KC. And then the teachers, and then everyone else who worked in the schools. And so, in building and sort of directing that coalition for a few years, I realized classroom teachers are where it's at, right? Like you really want to be on the ground. They're the ones with the expertise. The coalition always centered on what classroom teachers were going through as that connection with families and administrators. And so I learned a lot that, like, I think, I definitely want to be in the classroom at some point because that's really where the most exciting stuff is going on. Um, in my At UC Santa Cruz, which is where I did my master's in education, which we also got the teaching credential, the California teaching credential with that. The very first class we took was philosophy of education with this guy from Ronald Glass who was at Harvard forever, and he loves to tell the story about getting kicked out of Harvard because he was a rebel or something. But the first thing he said on day one of this philosophy of education was, and I've since realized that this is pretty standard, but there's a difference between school and education. And schooling is a particular thing, and the history of schooling as a form of oppression and segregation, it's different than education and how we learn. And the our all of our life's experiences and learning from our families and so on. And so that was really profound for me, and thinking about, well, what's my role in schooling?
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so I had a master when I was a student teacher, or a teacher apprentice, as we called them, at Santa Cruz, and I was fortunate to work at Scotts Valley High School, which is an international baccalaureate school.
Oh.
Uh, I got really lucky, and my master teacher said, "Hey, at the end of the day, history teachers were literacy teachers, right? Like we're scaffolding them reading and becoming more fluid readers of complex texts." So that was pretty significant for me. And then I had two mentors at Lowell High School. One of them, I'll never, I mean, just the simplest advice was the best. One of my mentors said, "Hey, what do you want them to know? And teach that." Um, and that was pretty simple because we were caught up in state standards and things that the district wanted to see. And so that really cut through a lot of, just trying to wrestle with what's the appropriate thing here to do on a given day. And I had another mentor who also said, every time I'm about to do something or I'm planning something, I just want to say, why am I doing this? Like, what is the purpose of this? And that's really great to, like, eliminate a lot of busy work and things. So I've been really fortunate to have great mentors, and my experience at Santa Cruz really shaped my philosophy of education, really.
Mhm. Wow, that's really cool. Thank you for sharing. And I think what you're saying about like the quote you said, education is a different thing than school, is that I don't think I got it word for word, but same. That's
Yeah, I don't think that there's a standard way of saying it, but
yeah,
schooling is an education.
yeah,
Yeah.
for sure. I think that's partly why because you're teaching political violence next year.
Oh, teaching sort of second round, yeah, political violence.
Oh, okay. Well,
Very
I'm taking that class, and
um,
partly because I partly like why I wanted to take it is because like I saw the connection to education with political violence because like I have a family history in Taiwan, and Taiwan throughout the late 1900s and even the early 2000s definitely had a lot. Like I've heard stories from parents, relatives, grandparents about the stuff that was going on, and a lot of that had stuff to do with education and the way they kind of enforced it in schools. Um, and yeah, I think yeah, that's super like I think I understand what you say through.
Yeah, well, schooling is just inherently political, even independent school, public school,
Mhm.
but again, recognizing every student as an individual learner
Mhm.
and their education path.
Mhm.
Um, like that's an important thing to distinguish. But yeah, but I'm super excited to have you in class. That'll be fun.
Yeah, I'm excited too. I'm last year, like I didn't take a history last year, so the entire time I was like, I honestly kind of missed taking a history class a little bit. And yeah, I'm excited, especially because it's senior year and hopefully
Yeah.
it'll be fun. Yeah. And kind of building off of that, you mentioned how you taught a wide range of courses at Lowell High School before coming to Crystal. And I was kind of wondering if there were any major differences or interesting aspects in terms of like the educational environment from like a big public school in contrast to a really small independent school, both in the Bay Area.
Yeah, I mean, it's although both Lowell and Crystal are some of the best high schools in the country, and it's really about student motivation. Um, yeah, I mean, it's dramatically different. I think that the most significant being the class sizes at Crystal. So I just looked at my ninth grade global history course rosters for this year. So I have one class that has 13, but my biggest global class has 16. That just gives, these are half or the size of what I had at Lowell. And so
Mhm.
that gives me a lot more opportunities to get to know students as individual learners. Um, but yeah, in terms of like my daily preparation, uh, it's very similar because the students are highly motivated everywhere I've worked, even at Scotts Valley. I really started my student teaching at Cupertino High School.
Oh,
Uh,
Cooper, I have a friend that went there actually. That's so funny.
yeah, and so I've just been very fortunate that despite Mr. Wallach's warning, like I've always been able to bring a level of depth with students. I'm just incredibly fortunate.
That's so ironic how the mentor that got you into teaching was telling you not to. That's yeah, I find that so funny. Yeah. And yeah, I think that's definitely for sure because I was talking with a friend who transferred from Crystal's middle school to Aragon, which is where I would have gone if I didn't continue at Crystal. And she was saying how she barely knew most of the people in her class size of 40 because, like, I can't imagine. I think I'm really grateful that Crystal has such a small class size because I think you really build the skills of being able to participate and engage with your peers a lot more than if it was like really.
It's funny though. I Lowell High School when I was there had 3,000 students, which I think is similar to what Aragon has,
Uh-huh.
and we have 350 at the upper school.
Mhm.
Um, and I think that there's advantages to both. To be
Yeah.
honest with you,
Mhm.
that I think a lot of it just depends on the personality, and which is why I think most Crystal students thrive on consistently working with their peers a lot in different types of projects.
Mhm.
But yeah, some students like to get lost a bit, be a bit more anonymous, but I thrive better as a teacher. I think at an environment like Crystal. So
Mhm.
yeah.
Yes, here. I think a lot of what gave me the confidence to like grow in terms of participation and volunteering in class and stuff like that really came from having such a small class size of like people that I kind of knew because I feel like I've really learned how to do that. And that's carried into the two courses that I'm taking over the summer, where I think I've been able to find the courage and like ability to participate, even if it's like a room full of adults. And I think going to Crystal definitely helped me build that a little bit for sure. And I also had a question about culture because you mentioned you teach at Lowell, Cupertino, and now Crystal. And I've heard a lot from both friends and just the news about academic pressure and the mental health crisis and like all that stuff going around schools in the Bay Area. And I've also heard a lot of personal anecdotes about it as well. And I was wondering, throughout all, I don't know what time periods you taught at all those schools, but have you noticed any differences and anything interesting that stood out in between these schools?
Just in terms of the pressure, the extreme
Yeah,
pressure.
and just, like the student dynamic and like competition, all that stuff.
Yeah, well, unfortunately, while I was at Lowell, we had several suicides, and one student who I'd worked with in the ninth grade. And pre-pandemic, there had been a lot of in the popular press, long form journalism. There was a lot of discussion about, especially Palo Alto really gets a lot of Pali High and gun.
Yeah,
Um, I'm convinced that I think there isn't really an educator who wants students to feel that level of pressure.
it's student
Um,
for
I,
sure.
I think it's a lot of the families and the student. I also,
I
I
think it's
think,
the cult. Sorry to cut you off, but it's like the culture that because I spent a lot of time my sophomore year out in extracurricular in the Southeast Bay, and it's
yeah,
just meeting students from like Mission San Jose, Cupertino, Harker, all those like insane like basis independent like those schools. Like you really realize it's what's normalized within the community that causes that. Sorry, you continue. I just
no,
want.
no, no. I just want to say that even so, I grew up in Fremont, where Mission San Jose is.
Oh, really? Wait, that's so funny.
I was at their crosstown rival high school, and they always had a reputation as being a decent academic school then. Although,
Now it's.
yeah, it was just kind of from the affluent hills
Mhm,
of Fremont. But I can say for sure that what you're describing, which is a thing,
mhm.
it is very recent, like in the last 20 years, I
And
think.
definitely it's the demographic there that's very
Yeah.
so.
But I'm not so sure that, you know, attempted suicides, I'm not so sure it's about having a lot of homework.
No, yeah.
But I do think that, we did a lot of training on things like this at Lowell and how to avoid adding to it. I really learned a lot about students when they are thinking about this kind of suicidal ideation and so on. They just want something to stop.
Yes. I
And
agree. I've
yeah,
been through it before and I'd say that's a pretty accurate description.
and that
Like,
was really, again, just a simple, straightforward thing that really clicked on for me.
yeah.
I think the biggest thing is wherever we are as teachers,
Mhm.
we hope that every student has at least one trusted adult, right? And that's the goal. Even at a smaller institution like Crystal, as a teacher, I'm not going to necessarily have this amazing connection with every student, but ideally, each student has at least one adult who, trusted adult that they can connect to, ask for advice, like on college applications and not just stuff that's happening in class and stuff. So I think that's something that Crystal certainly excels at, is that community, and a feeling of support. So
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, going to Crystal on a more personal note definitely helped me realize like there are adults that are there for me that I can go to if things
yeah,
are bad. And I think that's a very important thing to know for sure. And I think that's also another contrast between like huge public schools and like a lot more like closely knit communities like Crystal, because I know like some of my friends who go to even like other private independent schools that are larger, like they don't know their teachers as well. And I think like the whole thing with going to office hours or being able to just like, email your teacher with a question, it's those skills are really I remember you definitely taught a lot of that when I took your course in ninth grade, but it's like the like soft skills, I guess, are very important.
well, it's so funny. So one of the things that's great about Crystal as an organization is that in most of the adult meetings, anyway, we have the goals, the things we're trying to achieve, but then there's always a discussion about relational goals.
Mhm.
And that's a pretty standard. I mean, I want to say that Ms. Kim, the new middle school head, temporary head, I think that she's really driven this home in a lot of her meetings. Right, is that relational goals always go with our other goals, and I think that's so important. But I have tried to work in as much as possible, like Mr. Antiput said in your interview, durable skills, right?
Yeah,
Because these are
that's
things.
the word. Yeah.
Yeah, he was bringing it up in the sense of, yeah, soft skills is kind of like it's touchy feely, and it's not the hard skills, but so
Mhm.
it's important. But I think durable skills is something that we build on and last from job to job and through our life. And so that's something I've really tried to work in because it has to be taught, and I think that that's really hard. It can be modeled,
Mhm.
but teaching it uh, can not only pull you away from some of this, the history stuff that you want to get through, but so I'm really getting to a point now where hopefully I understand what I'm doing, where I can try to combine these things
Yeah.
better.
And
Yeah.
I think you did or like when I was a freshman, although I think a lot of it I found kind of okay, annoying at the time, but I think a lot of it's like not like sitting like this in class or like having your head down. Or I remember once I wrote a note on an earth and then you said I could have phrased it better and then you got me a new one and told me to write it again. Stuff like that. I
Oh
think,
my God, did I do that?
yeah, but I think it was okay. And I think like you're probably one of the teachers who have emphasized those aspects probably the most in any class I've taken at the upper school. And honestly, like I really appreciate it. I think I took away a lot from that personally. And also like the public speaking stuff too. I remember when we had to present about okay, I might be butchering it, the Ashikaga shogunate. Yeah,
Yeah.
those presentations definitely, like I managed to carry the skills I learned there into whether it be presenting scientific research or like doing ask presentations and stuff like
Yeah,
that.
when you really excel at that now, right? You're a real leader at a lot of public speaking that you do, but I think those durable skills are just as important as that literacy piece, right?
Yeah.
That I try to take that stuff seriously, so I work it into the design of
Yeah.
what I'm doing. Yeah.
Yeah. And now kind of building off of that, because I know like, year after year, there's been a lot more AI conversations at school. And I've personally been pretty involved in it with academic student council and stuff like that. And I was wondering if you could share a bit about your thoughts in about AI in education and maybe in history in particular.
Yeah, well, honestly, I mean, we've at Crystal, we've had a lot of conversations about this over the last few years, and it's been really helpful to work with the folks from CSET at Stanford who've come in
Yeah.
to facilitate conversations. And it's really been great to have a conversation in the rounds, right? Like every aspect of it. And the culture of Crystal allows for that. But honestly, I'm convinced, Caroline, that I think that it's too narrow of a conversation. At this point, I really think we need to just question the role of screens in class, whether that's AI, whether it's, just the word processing of essays and things like that. Like I just, in Scandinavia, which is traditionally Finland and the Nordic countries, I should say, they're starting to pull the screens out of the classroom. And they've been held up as models of education for decades now. And I approach this as really a cognitive load issue, right? Like, uh, is the screen ultimately becoming a distraction? Is it slowing the process down? I just think anecdotally, when I tell students to pull out the computer, things take twice as long.
Mhm.
It's actually not more efficient. And I don't know exactly what's happening. I think it's different for every student. So I try to do things, because I'm not a Luddite, so we do pull out the computers occasionally, but one screen for two students and they collaborate. And so I hope that keeps a kind of focus.
Mhm.
Um, but so broadly, I don't think we should a la carte these conversations about phones and AI
Mhm.
and other forms of ed tech. I just think generally we need to talk about appropriate uses, effective uses of technology. I was really struck by, Mr. Koopman, who you talked about the cybersecurity in your conversation.
How you really did your research, Mr.
Yeah, I mean, that was a compelling conversation where he said, "Look, I'm neutral in this. So I just want to say that I think venture capitalists are hyping this up,
Mhm.
uh, and it's a bubble, and they're selling stuff." That was really refreshing to have and to hear that kind of perspective, someone from tech, from industry.
Mhm.
And I think to a certain extent, the larger point that he had was we don't yet know AI's value,
Yeah.
and so I'm not. I think that these LLMs, ChatGPT, where it's like you can just have this relationship with this thing
Mhm.
and you can talk to it about anything you want. that general sort of approach. I think that's what's going to not be important for us in the future. I think very specific tools, the value in a history classroom is going to be, JSTOR now has an AI feature.
Really?
And so even though I've been very skeptical about AI in the classroom, although it's not AI so much as it's tech generally being, we're just saturated with tech in most classrooms. I think the AI feature in JSTOR is actually really great
Mm-hmm.
and to help students like interrogate the source that they're looking at. And so, students are always like, wait, you said we couldn't use AI, but you want me to use it here with JSTOR. And it's like, well, I think that this is a real application. And so I think that AI will find, as Mr. Koopman said, like the real value. And I think that AI is going to become much more every day and that it's part of some existing tool or process and it's tailored to that. I am, Ms. Rubin talked about the cognitive offloading,
Mm-hmm.
and I mean, and the research is pretty overwhelming about that now. And so I think we have to be more cautious. We're running a big experiment
Mm-hmm.
on tech in classrooms, and then a really dangerous one with AI in the classroom. But I'm pretty hopeful that there are going to be very tailored applications. I will say there's two things that I've been talking about in our professional adult community meetings. I think that we don't want to get to a place where, because like Mr. Andiput talked about, we don't want students to leave Crystal with this gap in understanding what the world they're going into. And we'd be doing them a disservice if we didn't address both the ethics as well as the efficacy of these applications. But I do think at some point there's this notion of anchored engagement. So we want students to remain engaged with the material, but we want it to be anchored in the history. We want it to be anchored in the geometry. So if we just talk about, well, here's AI, are we teaching AI or are we teaching our subject? And here's how AI can wrap around and help. So I think that anchored engagement and always being mindful that students are anchored in the subject and the learning is important. I also think that we have to have a serious conversation about thresholds, like when does AI kick in? Last summer, we were invited by the leadership at Crystal to really do an investigation as to what AI was and be able to come back and talk about things. So I took a course through Hewlett Packard on AI, and HP, tech was like, no one under 13 should be using this. We should be cautious about anyone under 18. I think 16 has become kind of a threshold. And so the developmentally appropriate stuff. And the other thing that really strikes me is it used to be, we hear this less and less, but you would have heard this a lot. Like, well, we had calculators, calculators came in and changed. But and you might have heard me say before, like, yeah, but we don't hand fourth graders calculators, right? They have to get the fundamental arithmetic numeracy down before we hand them the force multiplier of the calculator to do, more complex problems. And in history, I'm not so sure that we're able to develop those foundational historical thinking skills before really 15, 16. And so I think we need to start talking about when is the threshold and the right amount of a specific tool that's relevant and helpful in to maintain the anchored engagement. Like, what age do we start to introduce it? And I think those are the conversations I'm excited about, as opposed to I hate AI and it's the end of the world. Or because I really thought Mr. Koopman too saying, like, hey, the thing about AI is that we can just switch it off. And so I thought he had a really refreshing. He did not have a doomsday scenario.
Uh-huh.
So I no longer have a doomsday approach here. I'm just excited about where we can get it to where it's truly helpful and we're not engaging in cognitive offloading where we're hurting the student's learning experience. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thank you so much. I think you just hit on so many points that like I want to touch on. One thing I thought really stood out to me was like you said the threshold for the anchored engagement because um kind of like on a personal side note, when I was in elementary school, like upwards to middle school, my parents put me into this tutoring program called Russian math, where you take math classes, as the name implies. But essentially that was during Zoom too. So all I would do was I'd get the homework and then I'd literally copy and paste every single question into Google and there'd be these like Reddit, I know how to say like Quora, Brainly, these websites that I have to like dig through to find the answers. And it was just, I think back then, because you can't expect what a 9-year-old to realize they're engaging in cognitive offloading. I think if I'm using the term correctly. And I think with AI being so accessible, you access Gemini by doing a Google search. Like that's really terrifying because kids, if I had AI when I was that young, like even through middle school, I would not have been doing any learning at all. I would be so lazy and I'd just take any shortcut that I could. And I just think it's kind of horrifying because it's so hard to control. And I think often parents don't fully understand the implications because the kid doesn't know the AI is a bunch of code. The kid thinks they're talking to a real person. And I think,
An
yeah,
agent.
and yeah, And I think it's really something that needs to be addressed. And like you said, like AI is not going away and it's definitely, yeah, something that needs to be tackled for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, once we get the specific focused applications of these things, I think it's going to be a real boon.
Hmm.
But till then, yeah, just having these GPT, just ask it whatever. Yeah, that's a bit of a problem. I mean, humans are just we're sort of wired to be lazy, like just take the easiest path.
Yeah.
And so a lot of your guests have talked about the productive struggle, things like that. That's getting kicked around a lot. I think that what I can do as a classroom teacher, again, is that twinning piece.
Mhm.
And like what Mr. Wallach had me do in the 10th grade, like, is this relevant? Is this stuff that I'm asking you to
Yeah.
be engaged in that's anchored
Yeah,
in this
and that
work?
carries beyond history too, because when it comes to reading scientific papers, I've been told the first thing you should be thinking about is what is the significance of the study? Like before you go and understand the methodology, the procedures, you have to understand like what's the rationale behind. And I think, yeah, like you were saying with history, it applies to everywhere. Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that, you've had both of our directors of teaching and learning on, and, the focus that we have right now in transformative teaching,
Mhm.
I think that in the scholarship talking about transformative teaching and learning is about the frames that students have in their schema and how they make meaning and make sense of new information as it comes in. I think that I've really tried to focus and pick up on that challenge and like what frames am I giving students to really process new information as opposed to asking AI
Yeah, for sure.
to
And
like
I have
create a structure for that to be meaningful.
Yeah, for sure. And one thing I wanted to talk to you about, I was actually talking about this in the like philosophy, sociology, I don't know what to call it, class, was we were reading this paper. I don't remember the author, but she was talking about how because this was written in like 2013 when it was a lot less. It was just technology was just coming in. There wasn't all of this advanced AI, and she addressed problems like how the phones are causing like 60% less empathy in individuals, and I think she called it the fourth chair or the over-reliance on individuals. I don't know if you know who I'm talking about because I don't.
I'm not so sure. I mean, I think that there's a lot of that now, but
Yeah, for
in
sure.
2013, there probably
Yeah,
wasn't.
and one thing that we touched upon when we were doing like the seminar discussion was whether just completely restricting AI technology would really solve the problem because eventually once we go off, like you said, I know your approach is to reduce technology in your classroom, and I think that's honestly really great for student focus. But what if next year the student has a teacher that doesn't care and lets them be on their computers 24/7? I've had that before personally. Or when they go off to college and they can engage with these tools, like how do you think we should best prepare students in addition to helping them not cognitively offload on these like
The author that you were talking about, did you say that the focus was on conversation? Like, was it Sherry Turkle, who's
oh,
from
we did do Turk. It wasn't was it
Sherry, the
wait.
Reclaiming Conversations?
Yeah, we did Turkle, but I feel like I was talking about wait, I have it on my computer. Sorry.
Well, Sherry Turkle's at MIT, or was at MIT, and she really pioneered this idea of technology and
Oh yeah, it
society.
was Turkle. It was Turkle, yeah.
Yeah, and she was pioneering in this idea of that a field. It's actually a field at MIT talking about how tech and society um, come together,
Yeah.
and the effects. And I found a lot of her stuff and what they do there at MIT to be, pretty profound and certainly way ahead, as you're describing,
Yeah, for
like
sure.
way ahead of where we are now.
Yeah, and I knew you'd be able to figure out who I was talking about based off the details. Yeah, and the funny thing is, I think alongside this philosophy class, I'm also taking a psychology class on cognitive psychology. And I think the connections between the two are like surprisingly interesting because like one's a lot more research based, but I think I've been able to connect one with the other in terms of using the cognitive psychology as a way to kind of figure out the mechanism behind a lot of these things that the authors are describing, or maybe like just like guess, I guess, because I guess we never know. But yeah, I just think that's also relates to like how people think with AI and the policies and stuff.
You know,
I've talked,
where we are. Sorry, go ahead.
there's people I've talked to in these courses that are saying that like AI is or technology is just the same as the printing press or TV or radio. Like they pulled up quotes about the radio and saying it was similar. And I don't know. I think I see where that's coming from, but at the same time, the like drastic effect of social media, AI, all the stuff on like the accessibility of like a smartphone in your pocket is
Yeah.
like
And
really
so I think you've talked with a couple of your guests about the notion of being a digital native,
mm,
which they've been kicking around for a long time. And the idea, when I first encountered that, it was as a Gen Xer,
mhm.
that I'm a digital immigrant, um, and which is unfortunate phrasing. I don't think they do use the term digital native still, but
Mhm.
and it's like, no way. Like, it was my generation where we got the emails for the first time. Like, we were digital pioneers, right? Like, and I think it was my generation who built a lot of the internet 2.0 and a lot of stuff that's not great, maybe. But I think that I'm not entirely sure why this notion of digital native doesn't kind of creep people out a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, we get into some cyberpunk stuff there, like, where does the technology end and the humanity picks
Yeah.
up?
Mhm.
Uh, and so, yeah, I also would say my daughter is taking a class this summer in psychology
Oh,
online, and I'm kind of convinced now that psychology should probably be a standard.
oh, I agree. I was telling people like I think everyone needs to take this course. Like
Yeah,
it,
I mean, I
I,
really think that the learning science stuff that comes up, and
and it's
yeah,
just you understand where people commit fallacies, where people have trouble understanding shortcuts, like heuristics that people jump to, and it's just like I think this sounds so crazy, but I feel like I can like understand different aspects of behavior in my own life so much more clearly. And I
yeah,
think
and we do.
and the professor wrote a book that's essentially the course, and I think everyone should read that book because
Yeah, well, I definitely want to then see the syllabus and know who that is. Yeah.
yeah. And sorry, I know we're going a bit over time. Is it okay if I ask you one final
Yeah,
question?
absolutely.
I think I ask everyone I talk to this, and I was just wondering, after all your years of experience throughout both teaching and history and everything, I was wondering if you could go back and tell your high school self one thing that you know today, what would it be? And more generally, do you have any more specific advice for high schoolers going through everything today?
Yeah, I am so pleased with how things turned out, and I'm glad that I'm sort of arriving in the classroom as a practitioner kind of took a while. So most people might see that as an unnecessary delay, but I kind of like how things worked out.
Mhm.
Being in the service, being in movement work. So I don't know. Like, I was trying to think of something. This is a really hard question, actually, and I definitely would tell myself, don't go to Ireland every summer. Like, go to other places.
Wait, you go to Ireland every
Well,
summer?
no, but I did in my 20s and 30s. Like, anytime I was able to get some money, I would go to Ireland, and
Is it because of the history? Like,
yeah, definitely. And I should have gone to more places,
not the
but I think, I think your next question is, what advice would I give to someone now?
yeah.
There's two things that pop up. This is coming up a lot more in this concern about AI and the management popular press like Fortune and Inc. And now they're telling and where all of these regional and small liberal arts colleges are kind of dying because of this, crisis of especially boys not going into college. Um, but both of those things together, I think that a lot of the advice that's coming out is that students now should consider as undergrads double majoring.
Oh, really?
Um, and consider something, which is what I think Crystal set students up to think about, is that balance, right? And I think this is what Crystal graduates excel at. But I think students might want to consider something that's STEM or at least tech related,
Mhm.
but also the humanities,
Yeah.
because that's going to be those durable skills are what's going to be valued. And I think in my day, saying you're a double major seemed really eager and you were doing too much and, an overachiever. But I now think that there is going to increasingly be where you kind of tailor together a program as an undergrad to where there's the relational stuff, the durable skills, as well as the sort of tech um, uh, uh, competency. And so I think I think this should be natural for Crystal grads is to consider double majoring in that stuff
Yeah.
because I think that's what we do really well. Um, but as you know, usually it's at least one point every year. I always say the old adage that it's not what you know, it's who you know. That's not right.
Who
It's
knows?
not. What's that?
Who knows you? Or
Who remembers you?
yeah,
Yeah,
I
and
remember
you.
saying that when I was a little freshman.
Yeah, if that professor remembers your name when a colleague says, I'm starting this new project in the lab, do you have anyone in mind? If your name pops into their head right away, then so, students have to not view teachers and professors as, dance monkey, entertain me to, blow my mind with something. If they don't view that, that they have responsibility in creating that relational bond,
Mhm.
I think not only is life more meaningful by developing these bonds, engaging in the life of the mind with somebody who loves it, but yeah, it's just going to help you out a great deal if those professors know who you are.
Yeah, for sure.
Um,
And
yeah,
I think just like being able to find mentors and people willing to support you in what.
yeah, that's huge. That's
Yeah.
huge. Yeah,
And also, I think Crystal students in particular, I think Crystal prepares students very well, like you said, with the small class size and the close-knit environment. And also, what you were just saying about like double majoring and like having soft skill or durable skills too.
yeah.
Um, I think that's also really important because I was just having a conversation with Miss Carlton about academic pressure and stuff, and we were discussing how often Crystal students they go into high school thinking of an image of what a successful student is. And often that's like going into scientific research or like founding an AI startup or something like that. And I think it's very important that students actually, I think I was talking with Mr. Andrew Davis about this, like you have to find your passion
Your
before you
authentic,
find what you want to do.
your
Like,
authentic self.
yeah, or
Yeah.
yeah, that too, yeah. And it's pretty obvious when you're doing something just for. So,
If only students would listen or actually heed the advice that our college counseling office gives, like
for
don't
sure.
major in anything here that comes later. You
And
know,
a lot
this
of
is
people need to hear that.
yeah. I think, and this is why. And by the way, I don't mean to be dismissive of my earlier comments about academic pressure. Like it's real,
Yeah,
and we do have a role in making sure that we lessen that and consider what rigor means and excellence. What your committee is working on. What does excellence mean in the round? Um, but yeah, I think that there's so many uh, brilliant adults that are around us at Crystal that are giving really sound advice,
yes.
and not just like really wise stuff, but I think stuff that they know colleges they want to when you come into the community. And so
And
it always pains me to hear students kind of be dismissive of that, that
for sure.
guidance. Yeah.
Yeah. I was having a pretty similar conversation with Miss Carlton about this like a few hours ago, so it's pretty fresh in my mind too.
Yeah.
I think a lot of it's just kind of school culture and kind of what's the norm of comparison, pressure, what you brag about with your peers that really sets the standard there, like a lot more than the pressure teachers give you, because I think that Teach Crystal does that very well. And yeah, I think I'm excited for Ask to talk about these things because
Hey, Ken, I can ask you, I know we're trying to wrap this up, but when you get to college over these next like 4 or 5 years, what do you think AI is going to be like when you're
oh,
wrapping up your undergraduate work?
that's a good question. I've actually never thought about that before.
It's
Because
probably more relevant for you than thinking
yeah,
about it for me.
it's I don't know. Because I think it's just so unpredictable. Like every new thing that comes up in the news that I feel like it's less so of trying to guess, oh, this industry is going to need people or this industry. It's more so just like giving yourself the both like durable and hard skills that you can probably put to use in as many different circumstances as you can. And I guess just like doing what you think that you'd wanted or like would prepare yourself the best. Yeah.
Do you know there used to be advice that they used to give? I haven't heard this in a while, but rather than thinking about what you want to be when you grow up,
Mhm.
if you and recognizing that so many adults now change jobs and relatively frequently, and so that you don't get locked in on one particular set of skills. The question used to be, especially in the parenting literature, like don't ask a young person what do you want to be when you grow up. What problem do you want to work on?
Yeah. I
And then
think
you realize that there are different
yeah,
avenues on approaching that, and you might have to change
mhm,
what your role is, and
yeah,
and
100%. Yeah.
yeah.
Sorry, I know again we're going really over time. I said one more thing because I think what you said about like really just like going down whatever path that you encounter, I really wish I would have known that a little bit earlier because going, like I mentioned before, I was set on doing like scientific research because I saw like all the people online saying, oh, this is how I got into this school, this is how I was successful. And I saw upperclassmen doing the same thing, but that approach really restricted like I really wish I went into like debate or mock trial or just tried those things out or even ran track. And I think because I was so set on what everyone was telling me, like you need a spike for college, I kind of passed up on those opportunities. And I think I didn't really learn that until like late in sophomore year with Ask that like I really like you really get to find what you're interested in through actually doing it. It's less so defining it yourself before actually experiencing it. And I'm really grateful Crystal gave me the opportunity, or else I don't think I would have learned as much as I did through doing what I did, like got had the opportunity to do. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you're a pretty terrific student. I'm looking forward to working with you again in the spring. So
Me too. Yeah, so thank you so much for speaking with me. Okay, so thank you so much to Mr. Bell for taking the time to speak with me, and I hope you all enjoyed our conversation. And thank you all so much for listening. I'll see you guys next time.